As a truck driver, I've seen my fair share of eerie and unsettling places on the long stretches of road. But nothing could have prepared me for that fateful night on Route 66. It was a moonless night, and the only illumination came from my headlights cutting through the darkness. I was hauling a cargo of electronics, my rig rumbling with every mile. The CB radio crackled with static, a lonely companion on the lonesome highway. That's when I first heard it, a faint, haunting whisper on the radio. "Turn back," the voice said, sending shivers down my spine. I glanced around the cab, but I was alone. It was as if the voice had come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Ignoring the warning, I pressed on, thinking it was just a prank by some bored trucker. But the unease lingered. The road seemed to stretch endlessly into the night, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. As I drove, the surrounding landscape transformed. The tall, gnarled trees that lined the highway started to contort, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Strange symbols appeared on the road, illuminated by an otherworldly light. Then, the unthinkable happened. The road behind me vanished. It was as if the highway had swallowed it whole, leaving nothing but an abyss of darkness. Panic gripped me, and I slammed on the brakes, bringing my rig to a screeching halt. The radio crackled again, and the same voice whispered. It was accompanied by a chilling laughter that sent a cold sweat down my spine. I grabbed the radio, my voice trembling as I asked, "Who are you? What's happening?" No response, only more eerie laughter. I felt like a puppet in some grotesque show, and the puppeteer was toying with my very sanity. Desperation kicked in, and I attempted to turn around, but the highway had become an inescapable labyrinth. As I continued to drive, I noticed strange figures lurking at the edge of the road. Ghostly apparitions that seemed to be trying to communicate with me. Their faces were twisted in anguish, and their mouths moved, but I couldn't hear their words. I knew I had to find answers. I couldn't keep driving blindly into this nightmare. I parked the truck and decided to approach one of the figures. It was a woman, her eyes pleading for help. I leaned in, straining to hear her faint voice. "Escape while you still can," she whispered. "The highway hungers for your soul." I stumbled back, terror clutching at my heart. What had I gotten myself into? Was this some malevolent force that had taken control of Route 66? I didn't have the answers, but I had to find a way out. My rig's cargo, the electronics, began to hum with an eerie energy. The containers vibrated as if they held something more than just equipment. I knew I had to open them, even though I'd been explicitly told not to. As I pried open the crates, a blinding light engulfed me, and I felt myself being pulled into an otherworldly dimension. I found myself in a desolate town, its streets devoid of life. It was a ghostly place, with dilapidated buildings and an air of despair. The laughter that had haunted me before echoed through the empty streets. In the distance, I saw a figure walking towards me. It was the hitchhiker, the one who had warned me earlier. With a grave expression, he said, "You've entered the highway's domain. It feeds on lost souls. You must break free." I had no choice but to trust him. We embarked on a journey through the surreal town, encountering more bizarre and terrifying sights. It became clear that I was in a realm where the laws of reality no longer applied. Time itself seemed to warp and twist. The hitchhiker explained that the highway was a gateway to a malevolent dimension. It lured unsuspecting travelers and consumed their souls, leaving them trapped in a nightmarish existence. To escape, I had to sever my connection to the highway. Together, We found a hidden crossroads, a place where the boundary between our world and the highway's realm blurred. A sinister entity guarded the path, demanding a steep price for our escape. I had to make a choice that would determine my fate. With the hitchhiker's guidance, we confronted the entity, and I made the agonizing decision to sacrifice a part of myself to break free. The entity released its grip on me, and I felt a surge of power as I severed the connection to the malevolent force. I was thrust back into the familiar world, but it had changed. I had changed. The memories of the horrors I'd witnessed and the price I'd paid would haunt me forever. My rig's cargo was now silent, and the symbols on the highway had disappeared. Finally, I reached my destination, the remote town in the Midwest. I delivered the cargo and received my payment, but it felt empty. I was a different person, scarred by an encounter with a malevolent force that defied explanation. As I drove away, I couldn't help but wonder about the thin veil that separated our world from the unknown.
I've been a truck driver for years, and I've seen my fair share of the strange and eerie. But nothing could have prepared me for the night I found myself on that abandoned stretch of highway, alone and terrified. It was late, and my rig's headlights sliced through the inky darkness. The CB radio was my only company, its static-filled conversations providing a lifeline to the outside world. That's when it started, a whisper in the static, like a voice from the beyond. "Turn back," the voice said, sending chills down my spine. I glanced around the cab, but I was the only one in the truck. I thought it was a prank by a fellow trucker, but the unease lingered. As I continued down the highway, the world around me changed. The trees lining the road began to twist and contort, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Unfamiliar symbols seemed to glow on the road, casting an eerie light. The road behind me disappeared, swallowed by the darkness, and panic set in. I slammed on the brakes, bringing my rig to a shuddering halt. The radio crackled again, and the same voice whispered, "You shouldn't be here." It was accompanied by sinister laughter that sent shivers down my spine. Desperation pushed me to attempt a U-turn, but the highway had become a labyrinth. There was no escaping this nightmare. As I continued to drive, strange figures appeared at the edge of the road, ghostly apparitions trying to communicate with me. Their faces were twisted in anguish, but their words were inaudible. I knew I had to find answers. I parked my truck and approached one of the figures, a woman with pleading eyes. I leaned in, straining to hear her faint voice. "Escape while you still can," she whispered. "The highway hungers for your soul." Stumbling back, I realized I had stumbled into something malevolent. Was the highway itself a malevolent force? I didn't have the answers, but I had to find a way out. My cargo of electronics began to hum with an eerie energy. The containers vibrated as if they held something otherworldly. I had been instructed not to open them, but my situation was dire. I pried them open, and a blinding light engulfed me. I found myself in a desolate town, streets devoid of life, with dilapidated buildings and an air of despair. The haunting laughter echoed through the empty streets. In the distance, I saw the hitchhiker, the same one who had warned me before. "We're in the highway's domain," he explained. "It feeds on lost souls, trapping them in a nightmarish existence. You must break free." With no other option, we embarked on a journey through the surreal town, encountering bizarre and terrifying sights. Time warped and twisted, and I was in a realm where the laws of reality had no meaning. The hitchhiker revealed that the highway was a gateway to a malevolent dimension. It lured unsuspecting travelers and consumed their souls. To escape, I had to sever my connection to the highway. Together, we found a hidden crossroads, a place where the boundary between worlds blurred. A sinister entity guarded the path, demanding a steep price for our escape. I had to make a choice that would determine my fate. With the hitchhiker's guidance, we confronted the entity, and I made the agonizing decision to sacrifice a part of myself to break free. I was thrust back into the familiar world, but I had changed, marked by the horrors I'd witnessed and the price I'd paid. The cargo in my truck was silent, and the symbols on the highway had vanished. Finally, I reached my destination and delivered the cargo. I received my payment, but it felt hollow. As I drove away, I couldn't help but ponder the thin veil between our world and the unknown. I knew some secrets were better left buried and some highways better left untraveled. Thanks for watching.